Now that 3 years have passed since the heroes received their warnings about the androids, they made their way towards Amenbo Island. Goku and Krillin, alongside their families, arrived to see that Tien was already there. Like in the original, even though Shatsu trained with him, he might leave him behind as he thought he wouldn't be able to keep up in this battle. Something to briefly mention is that since Bulma would have had Chemise by this time, he likely left her with her parents to watch while she went to help in this fight. Yajirobe wouldn't have to arrive to give them senzu beans, since Goku just got them from Korin after leaving the lookout. So, the androids wouldn't be able to announce their presence by blowing up Yajirobe's plane like they normally did. Instead, the heroes likely realize that they're there when they start attacking civilians, as they'd hear the panic when it starts. As usual, they'd go into the city and split up while looking for the androids. Without Yamcha being there, the first hero they likely run into this time is Tien. Even with training in the hyperbolic time chamber, I think he'd be weaker than the androids. But that's also something to briefly talk about, as the androids might be slightly stronger than what we're used to. Even though we know that Dr. Gero's spy robots continued to collect data from the fights with heroes after the Saiyans, Gero didn't seem to pay attention to the data they collected. In the original story, he didn't know about the Super Saiyan transformation, even though his spy robots collected data on Future Trunks' fight against Mecha Frieza, though I think the computer the data went to is only tied to making Cell, not the androids. The reason they are slightly stronger, however, is because the power of the heroes was stronger in the Saiyan saga than they normally were at that time. So, the androids would have likely been made slightly stronger to reflect that. The heroes do have something else working to their advantage that Gero wouldn't know about. Since they already used the hyperbolic time chamber, they're also stronger than they normally are by this point. However, one major downside for the heroes is that they don't have any access to transformations like the Super Saiyan transformation. So, in their base forms, they're still likely weaker than what would be needed to defeat androids 19 and 20. Anyway, like Android 20 did to Yamcha, he'd stab his arm through Tien's chest after starting to drain his power. The heroes would notice his ki dropping, so they'd all fly towards where they sensed it at. Before they begin to fight the androids, Goku has Krillin take Tien to give him a senzu bean. Regardless, Goku then suggests for them to move to a deserted location, and Android 20 then destroys the town as per usual. Goku attacks 20 out of anger, but then leads him to a deserted area to fight. The androids only allowed this since they were confident that they could beat Goku. By this time, Tien was healed, so he and Krillin fly after the others to warn them about the androids being able to absorb energy. Anyway, by the time the heroes arrive somewhere deserted, Goku was still out of breath when they landed. Android 20 still talks about their history of being part of the Red Ribbon Army, but since Bulma is there and she recognized Gero in the original timeline, she'd call him out about his identity. When Goku and Android 19 do begin to fight, Goku would obviously be at a disadvantage without having the Super Saiyan form, so he would be getting beaten down at first. Also, when Tien and Krillin arrive, Tien would warn the others that the android can absorb energy through his hands. His only hope to try and win this fight would be by using the Kaioken. In this timeline, he's only used the Kaioken up to a 3x multiplier before, though the highest we've ever seen the Kaioken go, if including non-canon things like the movies, is to 100 times, which was in the Lord Slug movie according to the Weekly Shonen Jump. Though in this timeline, with him having already gone through the hyperbolic time chamber, he likely wouldn't have to try and push it that high. At most, he might have to push it to a 50x multiplier, which would theoretically be as strong as the Super Saiyan transformation. On the other hand, though, the strain of this high of a Kaioken multiplier on his body would be immense. While he might have the upper hand at first, the Kaioken will only exacerbate the heart virus. So overall, his fight goes basically like it did in the manga, with him eventually falling into his base form as he clutches his chest. Without Vegeta there to save him, the heroes would look on in horror as Android 19 grips his neck and starts to drain his energy. As usual, the other heroes try to intervene, but Android 20 would get in their way. Instead of it being Piccolo stepping up to fight him, it's Chi-Chi instead. She would have to use a high multiplier of the Kaioken as well to be able to take on the android, so she likely pushes it to the Kaioken times 50 as well. Now, briefly off topic, with what limited information Goku had about the Super Saiyan form from Chemise, they could have tried training Gohan for it when they were in the hyperbolic time chamber. I don't think they would have achieved it while in there, but they probably would have been close to doing so. Instead of them seeing a glimpse of the Super Saiyan 2 form like they did in the actual story, they probably just saw a glimpse of the Super Saiyan form. Though, I have no idea what they would call the form in this timeline, as they never would have heard Vegeta say the term Super Saiyan, but I'm going to keep calling it that for the sake of simplicity. This is also where my comment on my last video comes into play. So I asked people what they would like to see done, though I also asked the people in my Discord server that as well. At the time of writing this script, the majority of people said to try and do a combination of the two ideas, so that's what I'm going to try and do. Anyway, back to the fight with Goku and Android 19. Since Chi-Chi is distracted fighting Android 20, it and the others aren't strong enough to defeat Android 19, Goku's at the mercy of him. The others might try to rush in, but Android 19 would use his other hand to blast him away with a barrage of ki blasts. This could also be the catalyst that pushes Gohan over the edge into going Super Saiyan. After all, in the original series, it took Gohan imagining Frieza killing all of his friends and family. He wouldn't have to imagine that here, as his parents and friends could easily die here. When he starts to get angry, he starts to tremble from rage while watching their fights. A crater soon forms at his feet as pointed stones start floating into the air around them. Even lightning starts striking around the battlefield, causing the others to look towards Gohan out of shock and confusion. As his head jerks back, his hair starts flashing between black and a golden yellow. Eventually, a golden shockwave bursts around him, splitting the sky. After it fades, his hair is now a solid golden color and his eyes are teal. No one would know what's happening to him, but before they could react, he flies into Android 19 and punches him off of Goku. Now, since this is the Gohan that already trained in the hyperbolic time chamber, he would far outclass Android 19 in power. After all, Gohan, after leaving the hyperbolic time chamber, and when in his Super Saiyan form, was able to fight Perfect Cell. Anyway, after 19 is knocked away, he tosses Goku over to the heroes. Tien is likely the one to take him to the lookout so that he could give him the heart medicine. Before he leaves, they might tell Tien to take some of the medicine as well just in case it's contagious, like how Piccolo told Yamcha to do that in the original series. Gohan's fight with 19 would be a lot different than Vegeta's, since he would be completely outclassing him. He wouldn't even need to let the android grab him like Vegeta did. Instead, he'd likely just be able to do things like rip his hands off and then destroy him with a blast. Before getting into what happens next, I'm going to briefly talk about Chi-Chi's fight against Android 20. As mentioned earlier, assuming she can push the Kaioken to 50 times, she would be dominating this fight at first. Her main issue would be if she could maintain the strain long enough to defeat him, which I think she might be able to, as the main reason Goku's fight with Android 19 ended early was because of the heart virus. Though she would have to act fast enough to destroy Android 20 before the strain of the Kaioken takes its toll. With how strong they are after training in the hyperbolic time chamber, she could be able to do so. I can see her doing to Android 20 what he did to Tien, punching her arm through his chest. When he falls to the ground, she would blast him at a close enough range that he can absorb it, so he is destroyed, too. After their fight is over, she falls out of the Kaioken and collapses to the ground because of the strain. Since their fights were happening around the same time, around the time she collapses, Gohan was turning into a Super Saiyan. After both of their fights are over, Gohan would return to his base form. Chi-Chi would be given a sensu bean so that she can recover from her injuries. Around this time is when Future Chemise would return from the future, and when she senses the power levels of the heroes, she flies off towards them. Of course, when she arrives and sees the bodies of the now defeated androids, she would be confused. She would ask who they fought, and after they mentioned it was the androids, she would say these weren't the androids from the future. Since Bulma is there, she would be able to help fill in some of the blanks as normal. As mentioned earlier, she knew Android 20 was Jiro, and she'd still talk about his lab being in the mountains by North City. They'd all go to look for it together, so they fly off and search for it while following Bulma's directions. As a brief side note, since this was normally around the time Vegeta found out that Future Trunks is his son, I think Bulma would be the first one to realize that Future Chemise is her daughter. Anyway, when they do eventually find Jiro's lab, they're still forced to blast their way inside. Before they blow up the lab, since Bulma is there, she'd likely be interested in looking around to see what they could find. They'd find the pods containing the androids, and Future Chemise would recognize them as the androids from her timeline, minus Android 16, of course. Regardless, they'd also find blueprints for the androids and things like the shutdown remote. Since they also have time to explore, they would find the entrance to the sub-lab. They wouldn't know what the thing containing the embryonic cell in it is. After all, they haven't met him yet, but they would likely learn about him from blueprints and through Bulma searching the computer. Once they are done searching Jiro's lab, they then destroy the lab and androids. I debated on having Bulma try to reprogram the androids, but I decided against it. I only decided against it because I think they would be convinced to destroy them by Future Chemise because of what they did in the future. Also, in the actual story, Krillin seemed to be the only one who wanted to spare them because of his interest in 18. Since he is with Bulma in this timeline, he wouldn't have that interest, so there wouldn't be any protests against destroying them. So, the lab and sublab are destroyed, along with the androids and the embryonic cell inside of it. They also would have gathered things to take with them before destroying it, such as the blueprints and the shutdown remote. After that, they all start heading towards the lookout to go fill Tien and Goku in on about what happened with the androids. On the way there, Bulma would still get the call about the strange vehicle with the Capsule Corp logo on it. When she gets the picture faxed to her and shows it to Future Chemise, she would be shocked, since it is the time machine. The groups would split up. Future Chemise, Bulma, Krillin, and Sarai going to check it out, while Chi-Chi and Gohan went back to the lookout to check on Goku. When they arrive at where the time machine is, their investigation goes about the same as it normally did. The only difference is that since they already learned about Cell, they would likely realize that the shell and larva mold they found is from Cell. Speaking about Cell, he would still end up absorbing people at Gingertown, though with the androids already defeated, when he eventually finds that out, he'd likely decide to go around absorbing people to get stronger and to hide his key like he did in the original. Because of this, no one would find them until about 3 days later when Goku finally recovers. Since he is able to check on the world like Kami was, he would be able to find Cell in that same way. He would also be filled in on who Cell is from what the others found in the lab. I think Goku would step up to take on Cell, since it's his duty to protect the Earth, and Cell has been out killing people. So, he uses the Kai to teleport to where Cell is, as he then calls out the monster. He'd probably come out holding a person, as he then absorbs him in front of Goku. Some might briefly be confused, since he couldn't read Goku's energy, as unbeknownst to him, he has God Ki. However, Cell will still have the advantage in this fight, as Goku in his base form wouldn't be anywhere near Cell in power. He might try using his Kai to teleport around in the fight like he could with the instant transmission, but that would only work about once to catch Cell off guard. I could see him attempting to use Kaioken, maybe up to 50 times like earlier, but the strain of this would catch up to him fast. Eventually when he collapses from the strain, he'd struggle to catch his breath. Cell would approach him, taunting him, but Goku was tuning this out. He was trying to relax and tap into God Ki one more time, out of desperation. Soon, a blue beam of light surrounds him and shoots into the sky, piercing the clouds. A red aura soon surrounds him after the blue beam fades, but even his red aura soon fades. Once it does, it's now revealed that his eyes and hair are both a crimson color. At first, because of the red aura, Cell might confuse this for the Kaioken. While Goku wouldn't know what to call this form, he would say this is something different. Regardless, Cell would lunge at him, but Goku would easily sidestep this. Any hit he uses against Cell would easily damage him and knock him back. This would obviously infuriate the bug monster, and he wouldn't be able to do anything against him. Eventually, he uses the divine Kamehameha and atomizes Cell, killing him. He then lands on the ground, reverting to his base form now that Cell is killed. Eventually, after returning to the lookout, he would inform the other heroes about the defeat of Cell. They also summoned Shenron while there and revive anyone that was killed by the androids and Cell. The next day, they meet up at Castle Corporation and celebrate the defeat of Cell, though they also give Future Chemise the shutdown remote and say their goodbyes to her. While everyone waves goodbye, she gets into her time machine and returns to the future, as she has saved the past.